I hope you're feeling good, but you're going to feel better as a silver investor after watching this video live stream. Are we in? We are in the beginning phases of an epic bull run in the commodities, in the silver price, and the gold price. There is so much going on. I'm going to show you several reasons today why we have reason to be very optimistic. Big smiles for us, basement dwellers, as we follow the silver price, the gold price, and the price of the precious metals mining stocks. Let's get started by checking silver. 50% up. Silver, where are we right now? That would be what? $45 per ounce. But let's look at something super interesting going on with the silver chart and see where, how about this, guys? Maybe we're already up 50%, but this is a 1-year chart of the silver price starting back in October of 2023. As you can see, the first thing I want you to look at is that red line that starts right around January of this year and shows just an unbelievable strong and not like a rocket ship, not like a straight up, but a good consistent rise in the silver price up till today, where we're sitting around $31.30 in the future. So we've got a strong upward trend. But what's even more interesting, look at the green line coming down. That forms a triangle. You can see the triangle being formed there between the green line and the red line. Some people call that a wedge triangle pattern. No matter what it is, the price of silver stayed within that area for about the last 6 months. But eventually, when those 2 points come together, silver needed to either break out to the upside or the downside. And what did our good friend silver decide to do? Well, he or she, however you want to identify your silver, broke out to the upside, which is another second very positive trend for silver. But what I really want to point out, look, let me take a good look at my fellow basement dwellers. And by the way, thank you for being here. Yes, you. I see you. You're here. You're part of the group. You're accepted. Welcome. Hope you found a little home away from home. We love to talk about silver, gold, the other precious metals, platinum, palladium. We love to talk about the economy. We love to get together, and it's a big deal you're here. Thank you very much. I'll put out a piece of content every day. You're always welcome here in the basement. Okay? Like I said, you're part of the group. Please subscribe to the channel. Give the video a thumbs up. But how dramatic can I be? What is unbelievable, and I don't know why this isn't a bigger deal's not being made of this. Ron can talk today. Is the fact that silver, guys, since 1 year ago, look at the orange, October 2023, just about a year ago, the silver price was under $21. That was the low of the day, at the very low point. That means silver now is up by a little over $10. That's right at or right above or maybe right below a 50% increase in 1 year. The silver price is strong. The silver market is strong. Look, we know the other reasons. What are the other reasons, right? The fundamental, the industrial demand reasons. We know the monetary reasons. But what else happened? Massive, massive news overnight. We got news from China of a gigantic, enormous, we're blown away stimulus program coming out of China. Now, look, a lot of people predicted this. We've got guys like Phil Streibel over at Blue Line Futures. He's the first guy that I heard talk about this a few weeks ago. That is ultra bullish for the silver price. China is kind of let the bazooka loose when it comes to stimulus programs. The copper price is going up, and we know, right? Where is it? Here. Let's not forget, right? Silver is the bipolar metal. It has its let me get that up there. My little coloring for you, right? Silver is like bipolar, half related to gold, half related to copper. Okay. I'm sorry, it's schizophrenic in that regard. It's bipolar because it's very moody. The fact that copper and silver the silver price has actually been following the copper price much more closely lately. But China just unleashed an epic stimulus program, and that's what's going on all over the world. Hey, we have a guest this morning. I'm going to bring him on, Daniel Diaz, the executive director of Citizens for Sound Money. See if we can get him up here. Hey, Daniel.
Hey, how you doing, Ron and basement dwellers?
We're doing good, buddy. Thank you for joining us. You're certainly an authority within the precious metals community. And I was just pointing out the fact to my viewers that the silver price has gone up by 50% from 1 year ago right now.
Oh yeah.
50%. And then overnight we got we got big news out of China of a massive stimulus program. And that really is what we've been waiting for silver, copper as well. And I was pointing out the fact that copper's the kind of half cousin, or the other half of the silver price. So we got a lot of things to be excited about when it comes to these precious metals prices.
Oh yeah, 100%. The fact that China is doing a stimulus package and we're gonna start doing some more QE here as we lower interest rates. It's just going to be. Look, I've been saying since November of last year that I think there's going to be a major economic collapse starting in May, and it really did start in May. We had banks shutting down. Heck, my bank, which wasn't reported in the news because it was a banking as a service bank, is a part of at least I think 30 or 40 BASs that have $300 million locked up with the collapse of Synapsis brokerage, which we worked with Evolve Bank and Trust, which is one of the crypto friendly banks out there. And nobody's talking about it because the courts ruled that the banking as a service doesn't fall under FDIC protections, and we were appointed a trustee appointed by the courts to get our money back. And then with the lowering of the interest rates, there isn't typically an immediate effect when the interest rates in the Fed lower rates. It usually takes anywhere from 2 weeks on the low end. It could be immediate, up to over a year before we see a recession. But 100% of the time, when we cut rates in a recession, which we know because of the SOM test that we are in a recession, that we are going to go into a recession, and the fact that we're printing more currency. Look, the fact that we cut rates and gold is still going up. I mean, that's
Well,
not normal. When we cut
well,
rates, gold usually goes down.
but let me. I want to piggyback on something you said. If we're not in a recession, why would they have cut rates? Right? It doesn't make sense, right? If employment's good and they're winning the fight on inflation, which is a whole different BS subject, why would they cut rates if we weren't in a recession? And it's a fact, Daniel, that recessions are never recognized when they're actually going on. They're always recognized retroactively,
Right.
6 months or a year later. So, this
Yeah.
whole idea that Janet Yellen's running around and Jerome Powell saying everything's great, but we're just going to cut rates because we want to be cautious is a bunch of BS, is what it
Yeah.
is.
Well, 80% of the time they've cut rates in a recession. There is that 20%
Yeah,
where they were preemptive and started cutting rates before we were even in a recession, which we did not see actually a recession occur.
yeah,
So, but the statistic is when we are in a recession and the Fed cuts rates, it's going to get worse. And like based on the 10-year and 3-year inverse yield curve, the fact that we've been in this inverse for 700 days indicates that the amount of drop in the stock market and uh, uh, real estate and so forth, really the stock market, we can expect anywhere from a 70 to 90% drop.
wow,
Because back in 1929, which was the longest period of time we were in that inverse yield, was about 500 days, and we had like an 80% drop in the stock market. So they're guessing and they're estimating between 70 to 90% because we've been in it for 700 days. And then silver. I just picked up my first batch of constitutional silver. Actually, I picked up this one, a 1964 peace dollar, which is
wow,
supposedly the rarest coin in the world. I think it's a restrike. I took a look. There's a $10,000 reward for anybody that has a real one, and PCGS will just give you $10,000 to look at it. But like, look, silver is fantastic, and I think constitutional silver is definitely a way to stack and start building your stack if you haven't started yet. And
yeah.
look, it's an industrial metal and a precious metal. It's a bit schizophrenic in that way, just because of all the properties that this metal right here has. It can be used to fight viruses, bacteria. It has a lot of health benefits. There's also that's the healthcare sector. Then you have the fact that it's one of the most reflective metals out there, thus solar panels. And then you have Donald Trump stumping, like when asked about how is he going to fix inflation, you know what his number one talking point is?
What's that?
Energy. He is
Mhm.
now talking about energy and how when he becomes president, his goal is to cut energy prices by 50%. Well, that's going to require, as you were saying earlier, a lot more copper, a lot more silver, a lot more uranium, because we're going to have to increase our energy output to be able to lower it. We need to increase supply so we lower demand. So, I mean, it's going to be more fracking, more oil. I mean, that's his number one talking point for the economy. I still think Donald Trump has some bad economists. They should be educating him on monetary policy and cutting, the printing of the Fed and so forth. But
Yeah.
hey, if that's an indication of what's going to happen in the future when it comes to the energy industry, I mean, I think we can look for silver to really go up. I think I've seen estimates as high as $500 an ounce. That's on the high end. I see
Mhm.
more like $200-300 an ounce. And gold, I'm very bullish on gold. I think we're going to see gold hit between $9,000 and $11,000 an ounce in the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It can definitely happen. When it comes to silver, you may not know this, Daniel, but I am the silver psychiatrist, and I have diagnosed silver as having multiple diagnosis. It's bipolar because it's related to gold on the monetary side, but
Yep.
very related to copper on the industrial side. And actually, silver's been following copper price. It's been more of a stronger correlation. So it's bipolar. I'm sorry, it's schizophrenic. It has multiple persons. Say, I'm not a very good psychiatrist. It's schizophrenic. It has multiple personalities, but it is also bipolar. It's prone to mood swings, right? Like it doesn't just kind of, it's either really happy or really sad. And yeah, this idea that we could get to unbelievable high prices in silver. I mean, I've been showing charts lately. Like if you compare like an ounce of silver to the NASDAQ 100, like do that ratio, we are at unbelievably low levels on that ratio. I mean, that ratio actually shows that the price of silver could get to 500, like you said, even up to like $1,100 per ounce. And, and those are numbers. Those are like 50-year charts that show that relationship. When you compare gold, the price of gold to the S&P 500, right now that ratio is like 2 to 1. It takes 2 ounces of gold to buy 1 unit of the S&P 500. Long term, that's closer to 1 to 1. So to see gold at 5,000 isn't out of the question either. But people look at us like we're crazy. I mean, I get accused all the time. I'm a silver pumper, and I'm like, I'm a guy that likes calculators.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to hit on this too and get your opinion. So we got this massive stimulus coming out of China, which is going to be good for all the commodities. I mean, they're saying this is like a bazooka style stimulus. It feels like to me, whether you're talking China, the United States, and oh, by the way, those are the world's 2 biggest economies, or you look at Japan, another one of the world's biggest economies, or Canada, or any number, that everybody, it's like the because there's so much debt in the world right now, that they're just in a situation where all they can do, it's like the world economy is an old junker car, and all they can do is throw on a fresh coat of paint and say, look at this beautiful car, look at this, look how great things are. But underneath the hood, underneath the paint, there's a bunch of rust in a car that doesn't really run all that well. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100% sense, because they are using a model that they set up in the early 20th century,
Right.
Swift, and printing money. Well, not really, right? Like there's only 2 trillion physical dollars printed out of the $35.4 trillion of national debt, and the 200 or 300 $1 trillion in derivatives that are through loans and what you call it, fractional reserve lending, and other stocks and bonds, right? So all the credit in dollars that we have,
Yeah.
only $2 trillion is actually physically printed. So China doing this huge stimulus package, they're just pumping a bunch of numbers, in their central bank computer, and then they're going to give it out, and it's just going to inflate and steal the wealth of the people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and what they want is a much more efficient way to control the monetary policy, which I think is another way to control the people. Because if you control the money, you control the people, right?
Yeah.
Because look, I use this analogy recently. What is money, right? But beyond the three characteristics of a medium exchange, unit account, store value, ultimately, why did we as humans 10,000, 100, oh yeah, 10,000 years ago decide to start using a medium exchange? Well, our effort as farmers and working in agriculture, that's energy we're exerting. Money is just a representation of pure energy, right?
Yeah.
So we are working and toiling. We sell our vegetables, which is a form of energy, right? It took sun energy, took our toil and labor to get it to grow. Then we sell it. We're selling our energy that we've produced, and we're using a medium exchange to use it. Physical gold and physical silver is a perfect form of energy storage
Yeah.
because of the fact that we can't print more of it. In fact, to make gold, you need two neutron stars to rotate around each other and then explode. And the energy of those
Whoa, whoa, whoa,
explosions.
whoa. Excuse me. Where do I get these neutron stars, Daniel?
Yeah, very far away and billions of years,
I've got one of them. I've got one of them on top of my shoulders. Maybe you bring your neutron star over
There,
here. I'm sorry to
there we
interrupt
go.
you. I couldn't resist.
But what other resource can you store your energy in than the fact that gold took neutron stars to produce the amount of
Yeah.
energy? Look, we can make gold, right? But it takes so much energy to make one atom of gold that it just isn't economically feasible through fusion power. I think there was an experiment, I forget how long ago, where they were actually to make gold, but it doesn't make any economic sense.
Yeah.
At some point in the future, if we start mining helium-3 from the surface of the moon and we start getting an abundance of fusion reactors and everything, maybe at some point we
Right.
might be able to effectively produce gold. But that's way off, in the future. I don't even know if it's distant future.
Yeah. Well,
But
I've got a 1 ounce silver around here. It came from one of my channel moderators, Big Tim Silvershire. And a friend of mine, Bald Guy Money, is a YouTube channel. We were talking a few months back, and he pointed out, like you did, he said it's a battery, right? And not a battery in the sense of what we usually think of in terms of storing electric energy. It stores, like, I guess you could say, human energy, right? Like
right,
this 1 ounce silver round that I have that I will never get rid of. But the reality is, I could probably hire a couple of my neighbor kids to work for me and exert, let's say, 2 hours of energy based on this, right? Then maybe they wouldn't want this. Maybe they're not awake to the value of silver, but so I'd have to go to the coin shop and sell it for $30. But that I have this right here, right? This is storing, or maybe an hour of energy for a low price plumber or whatever it may be. It stays. It's like a human energy battery value.
yeah.
And I agree with you. I mean, I want to pull up the U.S. debt clock because, Daniel, we have big breaking news this morning that we need to check out here. We need to congratulate our politicians in Washington, D.C., because we knew they could do it. But if you look in the upper left-hand corner, guys, you'll see that the U.S. national debt clock, we've now rolled over to 35 trillion, and we finally hit it 400 billion. We weren't sure that our politicians were going to be able to find a way to waste enough of our money to get us there, but they certainly have. And Daniel, do you have any thoughts on that? Any words of congratulations for our senators and congressmen in Washington,
You
D.C.?
know, Congress is the MVP of destroying the economy, right? They're the best at deficit spending. I was just when I was in the shower this morning, I was thinking like, man, like I had a discussion about the Federal Reserve and the IRS income taxes. We get into those discussions from time to time, but I was thinking, it's amazing that our politicians can just make imaginary money, right?
Right.
And then not forget about a budget, right? Like what they're doing would actually be considered extortion with collecting in taxes. And they don't even collect enough taxes for the deficit spending. When the rest of us, right, the citizens that we granted the authority and power for the government to have these rights through the passing the Constitution and us electing our representatives, we have to have a budget, and we can only spend what we make. Hold on, let me
Yeah.
lower my allergy medicine reminder. Um,
Don't forget your medicine.
I know. But yeah, so if we have to be on a budget and we can only spend what we make, and sure, we can have a little bit of credit, but once you get too much credit, right, there's a point of no return where you owe
Well,
so much credit on credit cards and other debt where your income can no longer pay for it. That's where we're at.
that's a debt
We're at the,
spiral. Let me show you something, Daniel. Can you see on the screen the U.S. debt clock right now?
yes.
Okay. I want to promise to all the basement dwellers I won't talk about this again for a full week, but I think it's critical. And I want to get your thoughts on this. So we've hit 35 trillion, 400 billion. Woohoo! They're probably having a big party. But the U.S. national debt, right? When you have debt, you owe interest. So if we go down here to the bottom right, that shows our
Yep.
interest expense, 951. So we're approaching $1 trillion. The higher the debt goes, right, the higher the interest expense goes. The higher the interest expense goes, that feeds into this box right here, right? The budget
Yep.
deficit, right? That makes the budget deficit higher. The budget deficit directly feeds into, makes the U.S. national debt get bigger. And it turns into a debt spiral because now that the debt's bigger and bigger, that means this number, and these numbers have all been going up astronomically, like hockey stick, rocket, so it is truly a debt spiral, and these actions that we're seeing from countries like China, and what we're seeing from our own government, the United States, all they can do at this point is paper over this, right? Eventually, they're going to have to monetize this debt, and the dollar will just continue in real terms to go down in value, and the value of real assets, including silver and gold, will continue to go up.
Yeah, I mean, that's the definition of inflation: the printing and expansion of the monetary supply, and that is, look, there's a direct correlation. If you look at the national debt's up over 100% over 10 years. Gold is over 100% in 10 years. There is a
Yeah.
very high correlation between the rise of gold prices, and the rise of the national debt. And I don't think that's a coincidence because, look, most congressmen don't know is that gold needs to be the central monetary unit in which the entire world revolves. All assets need to be measured in a gold ratio, 1 ounce ratio. So if you measure the amount of ounces it takes to buy an acre of land, a house, a car, whatever, and then you watch the fluctuations and the ups and downs of those ratios, then you can start doing what I call wealth cycling. When something is oversold or overbought, you get out of that asset and you go into gold. When it's oversold, you get out of gold and you go into those assets, and then you build your wealth that way. Gold is that central base where you retreat into during times of economic turmoil or times of overheating of their economy. And when you print currency into oblivion, well, what's going to happen? Well, it loses value. It keeps losing and losing value. Like I did this in Missouri where I brought in a $20 bill and said in 1910 this would buy you an ounce of gold, and then I brought a stack of 110 $20 bills and said today you need 110 of these to buy the exact same gold ounce.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that gold has changed. You can put gold down on a table and it could sit there undisturbed for 1,000 years. Nothing's changing. It's not producing any goods or
Right.
services. It just is. And everything fluctuates against that. So, it is a death spiral. They're going to be spending debt into, I mean, they're irresponsible. And I was thinking, like, prior to the Federal Reserve, the government had to get the permission of the people to fund wars through bonds. If you didn't want to fund the government, if you didn't approve the war, you didn't buy war bonds. You didn't buy government bonds to fund whatever the government was doing. It was the consent of the people. The minute we created the Federal Reserve, it gave a license to the government to take control over all monetary policy and spend and print how at the heart's desire. What happens when you give an addict drugs, or you give somebody who doesn't know how to budget a credit card? They're going to spend and spend and spend and get drunk, right? Like there's no responsibility. It's irresponsible to give somebody who doesn't know how to manage their money a credit card with no limit. They're going to ruin themselves, and that's exactly what we did when we got off a gold standard and got the Federal Reserve created.
Yeah.
But I do want to address one question from one of your basement dwellers.
Sure.
They asked me an update about the Florida legislation. I got an update yesterday. So Florida, we got a $200,000 appropriations bill, appropriation set aside to study the impact of the Sound Money Act. That was recently assigned to a company. We're not being told because they don't want us to influence the research and the data that this company is going to do. But there's an RFP out there. They are studying the impact of sound money. I think the deadline is right before the session. The Florida session is in March of next year. So we should have something. And I think I'm not too confident we're going to get a good report just because the precious metal space and economics is very nuanced. But I think the fact that gold has continued to go up steadily, silver is going up. I think the BRICS meeting in October where they're going to announce a 40% back gold currency, I think that might all play well with the study bill, and we might get a favorable study bill. But regardless, we are already working on getting legislation passed during committee weeks, which start, I think, in last week of November or December. We're working with Senator Rodriguez, the Senate sponsor from last year, and she is wanting to hammer it through committees early on. Last year, we couldn't do it because it was there was something going on in the Senate. They weren't getting anything approved because of the Senate president, which killed our bill. But now we have a great incoming Senate president, Senator Ben Albritton, and he promised that he'd read Kevin Freeman's Pirate Money. He's open. We said that we were going to throw a fundraiser. Our super PAC, Economic Freedom PAC, is going to throw a fundraiser for him, his leadership PAC, sometime next year, because he doesn't. Right now, Florida is so Republican on the Senate side; they're not campaigning really.
Okay.
So yeah, that is an update on Florida,
Okay.
and we're going to have other updates throughout the country, Missouri and so forth, as we start writing new legislation.
And so, Daniel, I'm going to get your opinion now, and I'm going to get back. I want to ask you about New Jersey in a little bit as well. And we're going to talk more. Daniel is the executive director of Citizens for Sound Money. It's an organization that is working tirelessly to help further along the legal tender gold and silver legislation on a state-by-state basis throughout the United States. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But I had a moment of clarity, and I want to see if you can confirm or shoot down what I'm thinking here, Daniel. But as we were looking at this, and I'll pull it up just quickly one more time, the debt clock, right? All this debt, all this money that is being printed, that needs to be printed. And I think one great way that we can see that there still is money printing going on is if we go over here to the dollar to silver ratio, which means for each ounce of silver that's being produced this year throughout the entire world, for each 1 ounce of silver, there's $544 of M2 money supply that are being created. So I want to, and maybe this, I believe, will help some of our viewers as well. A way to think about what's going on in the world right now is to think about a seesaw at a playground. And on one side of that seesaw, we'll make it simple. You have all the dollars in the world, electronic and otherwise, and let's just say all the euros of the world, electronic. And on the other end of that seesaw, you've got all the gold in the world. So there's a balance that's created, and that's the price, quote unquote, in dollars and euros of gold. On that dollar euro side, they can increase the number of units by 40%, like they did during C19, right? They can just print, they can double, they can make it by 40, whatever. So now on that side of the seesaw, you've got twice the amount, quote unquote, of dollars and euros, let's say. But on the other side, you can't just increase the amount of gold in the world. So if they double the amount of silver and gold, I'm sorry, of dollars and euros, and gold remains in silver essentially the same, that would mean that as measured in those paper, electronic, whatever currencies, the price of the gold and silver double, which is why, like the example you gave earlier when you went to the Missouri Senate, the price of gold went from that $120 bill up to whatever it was, 15 or 110. Yeah. Sorry, I was off a little bit. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, I think the first time I saw that illustrated was in a Mike Maloney video where gold was on the scale, it was heavier, and as they kept piling on new dollars, the dollar side got heavier. But yeah, it's 100% true. I mean, look, here's a simple another example that I use. Look, the Mona Lisa is priceless, right? I use this as a Mike Maloney. He's like, if you have $1, he's talking about interest. Where are you going to get the interest to pay for that $1? You got to print another dollar. In this case, I'm using it more as the Mona Lisa. It's priceless. What happens if you make 100 perfect replicas that you can't differentiate from the original of the Mona Lisa? Well, it's not as worth as much. You make 1 million, pretty much worthless, right? There's no value. It's like going to the thrift shop and going to one of those paintings for 50 cents, right? Like that's what the Mona Lisa would become if you created an unlimited amount. That's exactly what's happening with the dollar. And it's the dollar is not backed by anything. It is literally an IOU from a bond that the Treasury issued. It's a representation of IOU that is owed to through the bonds that the Fed, the Treasury issued and the Fed and other people bought, banks and individuals.
Yeah, it's based on confidence, and I like to point out the first 3 letters in the word confidence are CON, con, right? It's a con job. I like to show this most every day because it fascinates me. That's an old silver certificate, right? From 1937. And it says right here on the bottom of it, back in the good old days, this is $1 in silver payable to the bearer on demand. So we really did have money at one point in this country that was backed by, we had real money. Yeah.
Redeemable. I mean, you could take that to the bank and redeem one of these guys, a peace dollar.
Yeah. And you know what? Those were those were, when we had that, those were some of the most like innovative, productive periods of time in our country, like we've experienced never before. I mean, we've done some great things, but now, like since 1971, it's like really we've done a good job of starting a lot of wars and racking up a lot of debt, it feels like. So So hey, we got some big news. Are you familiar with what happened in New Jersey recently with the legal tender? I think their sales tax.
I know it was vetoed. Did they pass? I saw that it might have passed.
Yeah, that's what I think. I believe that as well. And I know that was a big issue that New Jersey was charging sales tax on precious metals. So the most recent thing I heard was that it had been vetoed, but that now it has been passed. So we're making some progress on this legal tender front. Definitely.
New Jersey sales tax. Yeah, 100%. Now, the sales taxes, it helps, right? Getting rid of the sales tax helps with legal tender, but by making gold and silver legal tender, typically there's a clause that you don't charge taxes on the purchase and sale or the exchange of one form of legal tender for another form of legal tender. So the sales tax is definitely in the right direction. What's sad, though, is the only Republican state in the country that charges sales tax on gold and silver is, unfortunately, my home state, Florida. Yeah. We still have a sales tax if you buy less than $500 worth of gold or silver, or in platinum. It's in the statute, platinum as well. So we're writing a law specifically for Florida to overturn that and strike and make it exempt to purchase bullion, gold, silver, and platinum. We really focus on the gold and silver, but might as well throw platinum in there since it's in the statute.
Yeah. Interesting. Do you have a few more minutes to stay with us so we can talk about some of the other exciting things, Daniel, happening in silver? Go ahead.
I want to thank your basement dwellers. They gave me a thanks by putting 1, so I'm paying attention to your chat.
Yeah, thank you. You know what? I need to get the comments up there. I'm missing them over there. Hey, what about this? We talk about the future of gold and silver. This I thought was an interesting little news headline that I'm going to cover more later in the week. But on Zero Hedge this morning, I ran into this one. I mean, what is this telling us about gold and silver? It says Goldman's commodity traders say gold buying on our desk has been relentless. And silver is starting to move too. Does it feel like that to you, Daniel? I mean, I know you watch the gold and silver price, but it feels like to me that like another word I might use to describe both gold and silver would be resilient. Like,
Yeah.
are we? I mean, I can't believe, because a year ago we had $1,800 gold, that now we're talking about a possible like base or floor for gold, maybe even at the $2,500 range.
Yeah, I see sales increasing. Look, on the side, I help friends, family acquire gold and silver. You know, I've made connections in the industry thanks to my position here at as executive director. And over prior to the last 3 months, I maybe have done just under $100,000 of silver and gold sales. In the last
Mhm.
3 months alone, I've done over 300,000, just
Wow.
helping people acquire gold and silver. And yeah, it's picking up. I mean, I just made my first junk silver purchase, and I've made that available to certain friends and acquaintances. And it's crazy how much people are looking for silver right now, because look, silver at some point is going to become unaffordable for an ounce, just
Yeah.
like gold is unaffordable for most Americans right now. Look, 4 out of 5 Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. They can't afford to buy an ounce of gold. Once this turns into $2, $3, $4, $500 an ounce, maybe 1,100, right? That's like a
Yeah.
long shot, but that's not going to be affordable if we're still in a fiat standard.
Yeah.
So, you know, right now people are realizing that, and there are warnings on different YouTube channels and different analysts saying, look, if you don't buy silver now, you might miss your chance to get it at an affordable rate. And I'm stacking, man. I went full tilt over the last 3 months. I've converted a lot of my digital gold and silver and Bitcoin into physical gold and silver.
Yeah.
I still have a good digital stack, but I mean, I got a lot more physical as well. And you know, I see people everywhere. People are asking me out of the blue. Brand new people on Reddit are asking,
Yeah.
"How do I buy gold and silver?" I have people sending me messages. Hey, how do I learn about gold and silver and buying it, and how to test if it's real or not? It's a lot more questions coming up.
My mom asked me, was it Saturday night? I was driving to pick up some pizza. She said, I want to talk to you about buying some silver. So that, to me,
Yeah,
that was the big, and she's probably watching. Mom, I love you. And I told her, don't worry, I got you covered. Okay. uh,
yeah,
but yeah, more and more people are moving into it. You know, I need to say, just take a second here, as we're talking about buying gold and silver, to say thank you to my channel sponsor, Pimbex. Pimbex, online bullion dealer. If you want to get your hands on some gold, silver, platinum group metals, I never tell people what to do. I do recommend that you may find that you benefit from comparing what Pimbex can do for you with the other big online bullion dealers. I've worked with them for over a year. I've received overwhelmingly positive feedback and response from the basement dweller community. People who've given Pimbex a shot have been very, very happy. You always get the best price, great selection, great service, and what's very important is a company that you can trust. Now, we need to press the Pimbex magic button here to get an update on the gold and silver price. So everybody take a deep breath and let's see how we're doing. Wow, okay, gold's now up 10.50 per ounce. 26.36. Silver pushing up against $31 an ounce. Remember, Daniel, remember when we first met a year ago, you and I? And we were talking about $21 silver.
yeah. $21. I think gold was at 21 or 2,200 or something like that.
Yeah, or no, like eight, got down to 18, 1900. Yeah.
1,800. Yeah,
I
when we
remember
first,
I remember telling you, Daniel, a year ago, put all your money into silver. It's going to be $31 on September. I think I said
did you
September.
predict that?
I said September. I'll go back and find that live stream where I told that.
Oh,
Yeah,
that'll
no,
be great. You'll be a prophet. I will listen to you on pricing.
a prophet, as Susie likes to, might have an opinion on that. A prophet of BS. You know, you talked about, I do, but I you know, my truth, or however you want to say it, my belief is that we could have like $44. I just feel $44 silver. I talked about maybe before Christmas, but even, you know, as I look, just my feel into next year, Mayish, you know, and last year I did around December. My prediction was that we'd have $2,500 gold by May, and I was wrong. We got to like 24.75, but I just, you know, I mean, I look at technical charts. I listen to people like you. I mean, so I live this, and that's kind of what I'm feeling right now. But you said something earlier that I think is very important for us to, very exciting potential, especially for silver, because right, silver really hasn't moved yet, right? Gold made a big move. Silver and the mining stocks haven't really moved yet, and that's this idea that if we get what could be like almost like some speculative interest, a speculative mania. And my friend, the Silver Hermit, wrote something. I want to read this real briefly. Like, that if people really do start to wake up and buy silver, that it's such a small market, it could move so much so fast. But Silver Hermit said this. He said, the main reason why I think that the price of silver can really go berserk is the speculative drive which the public has adopted in recent years. People have learned that hard work and creativity no longer necessarily guarantee a decent life standard, and that successful speculation in things like real estate or in stocks is the only way to escape poverty. Silver is an asset which still a lot of people don't own. If just a tiny amount of the capital which is sloshing around in the financial markets finds its way to silver, it can really catch fire. Does that, to me, I thought that was a very powerful paragraph. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, 100%. Look, gold and silver, and let's frame it into the proper perspective of what gold and silver is here to do. Gold and silver does not make you rich. Yes, you put your economic energy into it, and it goes up in value against the dollar.
Mm-hmm.
But against actual real world assets, like for example, real estate, that's more of a supply and demand. But the amount of ounces of gold don't change. But 100%, I think if people start buying, because we're gonna run out of this right here, this metal right here, this beautiful silver metal, we're gonna run out. We already have a shortage, and it's just gonna skyrocket. And if people want to, and the reason why it's gonna skyrocket isn't just supply and demand, but we are past the point of no return. Our debt to GDP ratio, first, to understand debt to GDP ratio, most economists and historians say that once GDP gets to about that 90% threshold, where you borrow a dollar, like you create debt through the treasury bonds, and you make only $1.10 cents worth of GDP from every dollar you borrow, that right there is already the threshold to begin a debt spiral. We're at almost 130% if we haven't passed that already. That means for every dollar that the Federal Reserve or the Treasury borrows to fund the government, we're only making 70 cents, roughly 70 something cents of GDP. It's negative. We're way beyond that. We're at a death spiral that I think is going to cause the greatest depression in human history. And this silver right here and gold, I have a gold coin I can show you guys. This is the only thing that's going to preserve your economic energy. Stocks will not do it. Real estate, I mean, sure, but real estate is measured in dollars. Definitely buy land. If you want to buy land, but you're not going to be able to spend land, right? This is the money is how you spend land, spend your economic energy. But if you want to preserve, put it in land, but also put it in gold and silver so you can spend it and cash it in and buy goods and services. Because I think at some point, especially if we start passing these laws, you can take these coins into your local coffee shop and buy a coffee that's $50 because the dollar is inflated so much, but you'll be able to use 1.5 or 2 ounces of silver because it'll be worth maybe about 100. So that's just how it works. So yes, you are going to protect yourself. And the biggest wealth transfer, Mike Maloney says, the biggest wealth transfer in history is about to happen. And those who are in gold and silver are going to have a lot more purchasing power than those who are not. And remember, 4 out of 5 Americans don't have any savings. So it's going to be a lot worse than any other time that we've had a major recession in the past. And you just look, if you want to study history and see what happened to those who put their savings in gold and silver during the Great Depression, during the 70s. Even in 2008, Mike Maloney's has a bunch of gold and silver. They all talk about how it's preserved their purchasing power. You can buy a lot more when you put your economic energy in this. Once the economic downturn hits a bottom, and then you put this into land, and that's the whole wealth cycle. You put it during economic turmoil to protect it. Everything goes down, and then you put this into the land. It goes back up. You take it out. You put it back into this. It's
Yeah.
generational. It takes 10, 20, 30, 40
What
years for these cycles. But we're right there at the precipice, I think, of the biggest wealth cycle in human history.
and what you don't want to do, and I agree with you 100%, Daniel, which means we're both either crazy or genius, is you don't want to convert it into this, right? Here's the guest
No.
appearance by the paper dollar that floats around in my basement.
Yeah.
I want to show you a couple. I think these are called memes, because I think this relates to something you were saying as you were speaking. This came into my mind. You talked about, since we're in such a bad debt situation, and I'm not a political channel, so you could just say I think this is true for Republicans are, but if our government spending, I'll say, was a beer, right? Like, now what they're getting is a lot more foam for each dollar that they spend,
Yep.
as opposed to the real beer. And then this one was just funny. I can't say it. And again, I'm not a political, but if it was a swing set, that's what we'd be looking at. And then one last one. It's like cartoon morning. There's my I got in trouble. That was clickbait thumbnail that I made, but I proved that I backed it up. Gold. In case of emergency, or I'm sorry, in case of economic uncertainty, break the glass.
Yep. 100%.
That's what we're doing. I want to point out also, as you were talking earlier, and we were talking about silver, something interesting that I noticed between the gold and silver market. A year ago, we were all talking about, gold was at 2000, but we were all talking about how the gold price a year ago had already, in many foreign currencies, broke out the new all-time highs in the Chinese yuan, India, and that gold would likely follow. And that's what we saw this year. We are seeing the exact same situation right now. We're seeing silver, right, breaking out the new all-time highs in many foreign currencies. And I believe it to be just a matter of time until we're able to say, hey, silver has now broken out to an all-time high in US dollars as well.
Yep. Yeah,
as well.
100%.
Yeah,
I agree
yeah.
with that.
Hey, Daniel. So I want to tell our basement dweller community, Daniel is the executive director of Citizens for Sound Money. They're a not-for-profit, if I have that correct, organization.
51c4.
Yeah, not-for-profit organization that is working to further. I know one thing they're working on is probably their primary mission, but I'm going to let him speak here in a second, to further the legal tender legislation that's kind of sweeping through the country right now. So, Daniel, could you just share with our audience kind of what you're doing, what you think you'll see happening in the next 6 months or a year, kind of the latest updates from Citizens for Sound Money?
Yeah, absolutely. So just the mission of Citizens for Sound Money, it's very simple. Our mission is twofold: to promote the use of sound money and protect people's rights to do so. And we protect people's rights to use sound money through our legislative initiative and our membership program and so forth. I just mentioned the membership program. If you want to support our cause, we just launched our Pioneer membership program on our website. And once we hit a certain threshold of members in each state, we will then start looking for a state chairman, set up a state chapter, and start training you to help us lobby and get sound money legislation through, and to also help educate, right? So number one is educating people on what real money is, why is sound money required for sound markets, and that is what our new membership program is all about. So if you want to support Citizens for Sound Money and what we're doing, trying to make America great again with sound money, right?
Right.
Go ahead and join our membership. And what we're doing is we are rewriting the Sound Money Act. What we learned last legislative session was it is much easier to get portions of the Sound Money Act through versus a big omnibus comprehensive bill. So we're breaking up, let's say, like, for example, getting rid of the sales tax, capital gains tax for states that still have that. That'll be a separate piece of legislation. Legal tender will be a separate piece of legislation. If there is a desire, a state depository or an authorized third-party depository to hold state-owned gold and silver is another piece. So these are the types of things we're doing, and there's other things that we can also do to improve the use of gold and silver. Some states, for example, Texas is fantastic. Florida is fantastic for economic liberty, but you know where they fail? Barter laws. If I barter with silver for a good and service and somebody decides to steal and not provide me that good or service, I can't sue for grand theft because it's not covered under bartering laws. So there are other aspects of laws that we might want to get into to strengthen that are state specific. So if you want to join and help the sound money movement, join the sound money movement and make your state sound money friendly, join Citizen Sound Money, join our membership initiative. We'll train you. I'll train you as well in grassroots and lobbyist, citizen lobbying. And, you know, we need to
Right.
save our country from the slaves of enslavement of fiat. I mean, fiat has destroyed every aspect of human society. There's a great book. Ignore the Bitcoin aspect of it. If you just delete Bitcoin from this book, it's still one of the best economic books that explain how fiat has ruined every sector of human society. It's called Fiat Ruins Everything by Jimmy Song. It's a good short read. Actually, it's a little thicker. I saw it in person, but when I listened and read it online, it looked like a short read. But it's one of the best books that explain exactly how fiat has destroyed it and how gold, or in his case, Bitcoin, but if you replace Bitcoin with gold and silver, will fix all the problems that the fiat economic system has launched.
Yep. Yep. And, you know, we talked earlier about I love to look at Exter's pyramid, right? Gold and silver, they are the base. I forget the term you used, right? But all this other stuff above it, and we'll leave crypto out of the conversation. But, you know, bank money, the bank debt, all these different things, they're all synthetic. They're all make-believe. They're all fake. And, you know, it's just a tiny bit. We talked about how just, you know, that we could, if we had some speculation come back into the silver market, how big the markets could move. I mean, if like, I think our mutual friend, Pat Holland from the Missouri Freedom Initiative, and he calculated at one point that like if 1% of the derivatives market went into gold and silver, it would be like a 10x amount of money in those markets. I mean, like you talked about this potential for, you know, and we got to remember, this is critical. I gotta get, you know, we got to remember, Daniel, that financial collapse, I'm not saying the sky is falling. I want to be the town crier or the tinfoil hat, but these things really do happen, right? We all have this recency bias, like, well, it hasn't happened during my lifetime, where things really got bad. It's kind of like a 100-year flood, right? Like you and I could, here in Missouri, you can get really cheap land down the floodplain of the Missouri River. And you know what? It may only flood once every 100 to 200 years. So if we built a house 10 years ago, you and I are like, oh, this is great. You know, it's never flooded here. Well, guess what? It's going to flood, right? I mean, and I think that we can look at the fiat money system. If we look at the history of the fiat money systems, you know, the hundreds or thousands of fiat systems that have failed throughout history, they all eventually do fail. And when we look at that crazy U.S. debt clock and see what's going on there and all the other things that you so keenly mentioned today, like these things do happen. They do happen. You know, that's the reality.
Yeah. And you know what? I had a point I wanted to bring up.
Yeah. I hate when that happens.
I was listening to you, letting you finish, and I lost my point.
Yeah, that's why you'll see me looking down, writing down, and then I can't read my notes. Well, let's go. You keep thinking it's going to come back. I want to add this one. This one just blew me away. This example. This is a Gucci purse. This bag can carry 600 gold ounces, which weighs about 40 pounds. That equals this just shows the value of precious metals. Those 600 ounces of gold are the equivalent of 22,000 barrels, not gallons, barrels of oil. Is that just crazy to think about? Like the amount of energy that can be stored in such a small area with gold. And I imagine that's maybe the size of a small, well, it's 90 to 1, right? So think about what, whatever that would be. 9 times 6 is 54. 54,000 ounces of silver. I mean, but it's just crazy to think that small amount of metal can equal that much oil, which is another real asset even.
Yeah, you're looking at a little over $1 million, 1.2 million, something like that, $1.4 million in gold, I think.
Yeah.
I can't do math in my head that quick, but yeah, I mean that makes sense. Look, gold is very dense, man. Like even fraction when you look at a fractional coin, like I have a French franc, which is 0.1867 pure ounces of pure gold. I mean, and you compare that to how many ounces of silver, it's like $500. $500 of silver, you know, it's a lot more than a tiny little French franc that weighs like 5.2 grams. You
Right.
know, so gold is very dense metal. You can carry $100,000 in the palm of your hand. It's. I love gold because you can wear it as jewelry, right? Like I got my ring and my bracelet. And if I in a pinch, I know that this right here that I'm wearing, even though it's 14 karat, is slightly over a pure ounce of gold. So I'm wearing at least $2,600 worth in a pinch, you know, and it's great. It's very compact. People don't really think of jewelry as money. When you see gold as a central monetary unit, it's money. And yeah, the ratio is really out of balance right now with gold and silver, but I think there's an economic reason for that. As you as something gains more utility, it becomes less it's less viewed as something valuable, right? So it's this, I like using on the digital side of things for the digital people. Think of Bitcoin. Bitcoin has very little smart. It doesn't have many smart contracts. They're just getting into that. It's more seen as a store of value, as Michael Saylor says. But Ethereum is a smart contract. It was built so you can build applications, games, businesses, entire like ecosystems on, and it's like 1/10 of the value of Bitcoin. Right. And the same thing with gold and silver. Gold is money. Yeah, you can use it in electronics. You might be able to use it for some utilities. But silver is definitely being used in every single industrial sector in the world, and it's seen more as a utility. So there, I forget what the name of the diminishing. I think it's called the
Diminishing returns.
diminishing return of utility diminishing return, whatever. The more utility something has, the less valuable it is perceived because of I don't know, maybe because more efficient to produce. I'm not exactly sure the reasons why that happens, but I think that's why it's like a 90-to-1 ratio right now. And I don't really see silver getting back to that precious metal status alone because of the amount of energy and the fact that they're coming out with silver batteries that retain energy way longer, way more efficiently, charges way faster than lithium batteries.
Yep. Daniel, thank you for joining us today. I'm going to bring people out to your website here. Hold on one second. So
Absolutely.
Citizens for Sound Money. Here we go, guys. I want to show you where you can go. How embarrassing if I have the wrong website pulled up, but I think I got it right. And there we go. This is it right here, guys. Citizens for Sound Money. Again, it's citizens, the number 4, soundmoney.org. You can learn more about the organization there. You can become a member. You can donate to them. They are a not-for-profit, and there's all kinds of great. Where's the thing that shows all the states? Is that under legislation?
Under legislation.
There we go. State list. And this will probably become more pertinent as we move into 2025 and head into the new legislation season. Is that correct, Daniel? But
yeah, we're gonna continue to update the states as sessions start. I mean, there are a few handful of states that have year-long sessions, which are more liberal.
Right.
Like New Jersey, actually. New Jersey has, I think, a year-long session. In California. But those states, there's probably a little harder to get legal tender passed through. But as we progress through legislation, get bills filed, get sponsors, we'll update that list with the legislation and where those pieces of legislation are in the committee process.
All right, my friend. Thank you for being here with us today. I took you off the screen already. We appreciate you. We appreciate all the hard work you're doing. And hopefully we'll see you again here in a few weeks for an update, and next year some great updates regarding as we continue to see more legislation being passed across the country.
Absolutely. Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Daniel. See you. Bye-bye. Hey guys, I want to also say thank you to you for being here, right? You are Ron's basement. It's really not my basement. We got like 600 of us down here. So thank you for being here. We also want to say thank you to our channel sponsor, First Mining Gold, Canadian gold developer with 2 multi-million ounce projects in Canada, and Fortuna Mining, a producing gold and silver mining company with operations in Latin America and West Africa. Great companies, both of them. You can learn more about them at their websites. I'll have a link to those in the description of this video. Don't forget to check out Citizens for Sound Money, and also channel sponsor Pinbex, Pimbex. Let's run out there real quick before I say goodbye and just check and see what's going on. This is always where I need to take a deep breath. Okay, last we checked, we were up 1050 on gold, and we are 1080. Silver still up 30 cents. All right, basement dwellers. Hey, thank you guys for being here. Okay, have a great day. Be nice to yourself. Be nice to those around you. Okay, and I'll look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks again to Daniel Diaz from Citizens for Sound Money for joining us today. Have a great one.